We're on a journey from field to fork.
By 2050, there are expected to be 10 billion people on the planet. How to feed everyone is a profound question for the whole world and is set to transform farming in the decades ahead.
You feel like you are part of the change that could transform the way people eat.
From preserving water, the lifeblood that feeds the crops,
We've increased our water use efficiency by over 33% in the 20 years.
to regenerating the very soil they grow in.
This is a liquid fermenter that allows us to scale just a little bit of microbes into a lot of microbes.
From sustainable and safe food
Welcome to the largest vertical farm in the world.
to protecting the environment and reducing waste.
It's an amazing feeling to see that you can contribute to something that will change the world.
To explore how innovation and modern agriculture are leading the way.
It's fundamentally a game changer for farmers around the world.
To reform our land and diet and connecting farmer to consumer. It is expected that the global demand for fresh water supply is set to increase by 55% over the next 50 years. In this episode, we'll be looking at how agriculture is rising to this challenge to become more water efficient. We'll be meeting the innovators making extraordinary strides in protecting this finite resource by enabling farmers to grow more with less.
Welcome to Follow the Food. Water is our most precious resource, but with agriculture using 70% of all fresh water globally, our reserves are under serious pressure. If we're going to continue to farm in a sustainable and productive way, we have to protect this invaluable asset.
Today, agriculture uses 3 times more water for irrigating crops than it did 50 years ago, with this figure only set to increase by a further 19% by 2050. While rising food demands play a major role in our increasing need for freshwater irrigation, climate change, and drought in particular, are also having a big impact. In recent years, the periods of drought have been lasting longer, are more extreme, and more widespread. And here in the US, that is no exception.
California is one of the largest food-producing states in the US, growing more than 200 different types of crops. But in recent years, it experienced one of the worst droughts since we began keeping records.
With over a third of the country's vegetables and 2/3 of the country's fruits and nuts grown in California, the 2011 through 2017 drought at its height cost the industry an estimated $1.9 billion annually.
If California is to continue producing at the same rate, it's going to have to figure out how to manage water for agriculture in an ever smarter way.
With farmers in California currently irrigating some 9 million acres of crops, the pressure to conserve water has never been greater. Spencer Cooper is the Senior Manager of Irrigation and Water Efficiency for the Almond Board of California. They're looking at innovative ways to expand their current precision irrigation strategy.
How big is almond production in California?
A little over 80% of the world's almond production comes from right here in California. A little over 1.2 million acres planted.
Wow, that's amazing.
We have the unique environment to grow almonds.
California experienced a long drought. That must be just an incredibly scary time for farmers.
Yeah, we just are coming out of the drought, but we know we have to be responsible with those resources that we have because we know it's a limited resource. And so it's something I think it's top of mind of every almond grower when they go and plant an orchard. How am I going to manage that water the most efficiently?
In the past, the majority of almond farmers would irrigate their crops by flooding their fields at set intervals, a method that consumes large volumes of water. However, more efficient methods are now being introduced.
How do you irrigate an orchard like this?
So this orchard is done with micro drip irrigation, designed to put out the exact amount of water that a tree needs. What we're doing here is we split this orchard into 1 acre quadrants. And so every acre can be irrigated differently throughout the season based on tree growth, based on water demand. So we've increased our water use efficiency by over 33% in the 20 years.
As well as soil moisture sensors and plant monitoring systems, a new piece of revolutionary technology is being road tested.
And now we've added Landsat and satellite data.
Since 1972, the Landsat program, a series of Earth-observing satellite missions jointly managed by NASA and the United States Geological Survey, have revolutionized the way humans view and study our planet. 2 NASA satellites operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, using cameras to measure light reflected by Earth from the sun to create images. Daniele Zaccaria is part of the agricultural management research team at University of California, Davis, working on a pilot irrigation project using Landsat data.
How is it used exactly for agriculture?
You can see the changes of your orchard over time and over space. And by measuring the canopy temperature, you can see whether the canopy is in balance with the rest of the environment around the trees.
The amount of water being absorbed by the plants is calculated by measuring how much moisture is released into the air, a cooling process similar to sweat evaporating from skin. By looking at the visible light reflected from this evaporation, scientists are able to record not only how cool the surface temperature is, and hence how well irrigated the plant is, but also how well the plant is growing.
Can I see some of the images?
Sure.
Okay.
This is an example of a Landsat 8 image representing this orchard on your right. And you can see different pixels, the shape of a square, and you can see different level of greenness. And so those are bigger plants with a lot of leaf foliage. That means the plant is happy and is transpiring its potential level. And that means there is producing more than the other tree that you see here in the image with the less green color.
So I'm looking right here, and it's lighter green than over here. Now what do I do?
I can go to the level of each and every tree, and if I see there is a smaller tree, then I can boost up a little bit the fertilizer and water and try to have the tree develop better and become homogeneous with the rest of the field.
It just seems to me when you look at this picture from above, it is so easy to say, this part's healthy, this part's not healthy, I have to do something there.
It is hoped that a 10 to 15% gain in water productivity can be achieved by harnessing the satellite data received, an invaluable tool in the battle to conserve water use on our farmlands.
Paint a picture for me 15 years from now.
We're going to have much better skilled growers and better resource efficiency in agriculture production, so use less water, less energy, less nutrient, so we can be better manager of our business with the precise input the technology will make available.
It seems strange that the answer to how we manage water down here on Earth may be hurtling through space hundreds of miles above our heads. But this is no longer the work of science fiction. This technology has the potential to significantly change things here in California and around the globe.
To help understand the bigger problem of our globally diminishing water resources and world hunger, Greg Foote went to meet Gilbert Hungbo, head of the UN Specialist Agency dedicated to eradicating poverty.
Let's start then by looking ahead. The next 30 years, what could the situation be like by the time we reach 2050 in terms of farming, in terms of water?
I don't want to be overly skeptical or pessimist, but if nothing is done, let's face it, it's going to be a challenge for us.
Why do we continue to undervalue and underappreciate water?
That's a very good question. In many parts of the globe, you see, we are not necessarily paying for water. And so it is there, it's available. People tend to compare the pressing needs for today instead of planning from the medium and long term.
What would be your 3 suggestions, your top 3 ways that we could start tackling those challenges?
Then you know that when it comes to the issue of water, the first thing is conserve, conserve, conserve. Secondly, I honestly believe we need to do the maximum use of technology that will help us be much more efficient use of water. The third thing is the climate change dimension.
Coming up, we discover vital work taking place in the UK and China, aimed at safeguarding one of the world's most widely consumed and thirsty crops.
For every kilogram of rice that's produced, it uses about 2,000 to 3,000 litres of water.
Oh, that's a lot.
It is, and that's what we're trying to reduce.
We're looking at the great water challenge that we face as a planet.
In the coming decades, our global population is expected to increase dramatically. At the same time, our planet's freshwater reserves are predicted to decrease significantly.
That will be a big problem when it comes to cultivating crops in the future. Growing one staple food in particular consumes a staggering half of all water used in agriculture: rice. Lorato Mbele has come to Beijing, China, to understand how climate change is affecting rice farming.
In the nation's coastal regions, salt levels in soil are on the rise. It's an effect that's been linked to rising sea levels. The resulting salinity, the term used for the level of salt in water, is responsible for slowing the growth and reducing the yields of this vital crop.
Please explain to me why the work being done on salt-tolerant rice is important for China.
We have long coastal areas. For this area, salinity is also a very important issue for the rice farming. If you have this kind of salinity tolerance, the rice can be extended to those coastal areas, those marginal areas with those salinity stresses. So we can have more arable lands like this. Rice is very adaptive to various environmental factors like drought, salinity stress, and also diseases. It's not only important for China, but for all the countries who is facing the salinity stress problem.
Started over 2 decades ago, the Green Super Rice Project has brought together over 500 different rice varieties to create hybrids that are tolerant to a range of stresses without compromising on grain quality or yield. At the Chinese Institute of Crop Sciences in Beijing, Dr. Naveed Shahzad Amir is working on producing a variety of rice suited to growing in soil found along China's coastline that's suffering from high salt content.
Okay, these look green. Does this mean this is flourishing?
No, there are some dried, but only few are still green.
So what are you looking for here?
We are looking for the better genotypes having tolerance in the salinity.
And how can you identify that?
You can see from here, this plants is much better green. You can see also here the roots. You see the plants that have a tolerance are still survive, their roots are also survived. The plants having no tolerance, the roots are very short. You see?
Okay, so the longer the roots, the greater the tolerance.
Yeah.
By selecting the plants which are most tolerant to the high salt content and naturally crossbreeding them with other high-yielding varieties, the team hope to create the perfect plant.
So on top of testing for salinity, what else are you looking for?
With the salinity, we are also looking for water use efficiency and nutrient use efficiency, so that the genotypes that we are selecting and working for can survive under less environmental impact and less inputs, so that farmer can get maximum benefit, and also it can go in a wide range of the environmental conditions.
So once you've established all of these facts, what happens next? Do you take these into the field? Can they grow naturally there?
Yes, so we will take these lines and cross it with high-yielding lines and get better plants.
And will they grow and survive
well
in the wild?
Yes, they can survive in the field under severe conditions of salinity and can give a good yield also.
It's hoped research taking place here in China and collaborations with other institutions around the world will help farmers dealing with soils high in salt to cultivate rice more efficiently.
Thank you for your time.
And in the process, reduce the reliance on our precious water resource.
When you look at a map of the world, it's plain to see that 97% of all the water on the planet contains salt. And that presents an opportunity to produce more salt-resistant crops. not just in China, but in countries across the world.
And across the world, 8,000 kilometers away from Beijing in the north of England, Greg Foote picks up the rice story, where a different kind of future-proof research is taking place.
So you might be wondering, why am I here in the UK to talk about rice? Well, it takes a huge amount of water to grow it. And researchers at the University of Sheffield think that they may have found a way to reduce that amount. And that could have huge implications as our climate continues to change. Professor Julie Gray heads up a team of researchers here. So what happens in here, Julie?
So this is our research laboratory where we study plants and study their water use.
Looks like a rice plant to me. And it's hugely water intensive, right?
It is. For every kilogram of rice that's produced, it uses about 2,000 to 3,000 litres of water.
Oh, that's a lot.
It is, and that's what we're trying to reduce.
How are you going to do that?
Well, we're going to try and get the plants to lose less water. Plants take water up through their roots and it goes up through the plant, and about 97–98% of it comes straight out through these tiny pores in the leaves called stomata. And what we've been doing is reducing the number of stomata on the leaves so there are less holes for the water to come out of.
Like most plants, rice uses microscopic pores called stomata to regulate the flow of water. Here, they are creating plants with fewer stomata using a range of traditional plant breeding techniques, as well as gene editing and genetic modification, which gives scientists the ability to change an organism's DNA structure. Some of these technologies, especially genetic modification, are contentious and subject to varying levels of regulation around the world. Does that end up changing the yield from the plant, the amount of rice you get from the crop?
Going down to 50% of the normal number of stomata, we don't get any reduction in yield. And they still photosynthesize quite normally under laboratory conditions.
Dr. Robert Kane has the job of working out which rice plants use more or less water.
Yeah, so this is the growth chambers here at the university. We have a number of different types of chamber. We can change the light, the CO2. We can also modify the humidity as well. So this
It is so bright and hot.
Indeed, yeah.
It's so hot.
We're trying to replicate Southeast Asian rice paddies, 30 degrees and a lot of light.
So what have we got going on here?
Okay, so what we've got here is a normal plant with normal stomata and a plant with fewer stomata as well.
Okay.
Do you reckon you can tell the difference?
No.
There is another way to look at this by using thermal imaging. That will enable you to see how water is flowing. The dark blue is the coolest part and the red is the hottest part.
The plant on the right is bluer than the plant on the left.
Indeed.
So that means the plant on the right is cooler than the plant on the left.
Yes.
Over a series of days, these two plants are put through a drought scenario. The amount of water they have access to is reduced, and the thermal imaging camera shows how they react. Mid-drought, the lab-grown plant with fewer stomata has released less water, maintaining a healthy balance within the plant. The standard plant, with normal levels of stomata, has lost considerably more water. As the drought period comes to an end, having retained more water during the dry spell, the lab-grown plant has remained healthier and as a result is now able to draw in water faster than the standard plant, recovering to full productive health quicker. The one on the right is recovering better from the drought.
That's right.
Why does it therefore appear cooler?
Because more water is flowing through and then the thermal imaging camera is following the water flow. And so it's basically saying it's, if you like, it's slightly more alive and regenerative.
Drought-tolerant rice with fewer stomata are now being trialled in the Philippines and Thailand. Creating new commercial varieties will be the next step. So what do you think the future is for all this?
Well, food security is a big problem and diminishing water resources are a big problem. So we're hoping that we can begin to future-proof the rice. About 20% of the rice crop is currently affected by drought conditions, so it's already limiting our ability to grow rice, and that's only going to get worse with climate change. And we're hoping that by allowing plants to conserve water in the soil, when they get to high temperatures, they've got enough water left to cool themselves through evaporation and actually to help them when there's a drought.
So what excites you about this research?
We would be so excited if we could actually improve things for farmers in the developing world.
As climate change continues, temperatures across much of the planet are going to increase and water availability is going to drop. That threatens crops all over the world, especially in places where drought is worsening. Researchers at institutions like this are looking at changing the properties of crops. Not only make them use less water, but also make them survive better when there is less water available. Two factors that could prove vital for our future global food security.
Despite the challenges of water usage facing farmers globally, Gilbert Hungbo believes we're moving in the right direction.
In your role as president of IFAD, as chair for UN Water, what's exciting you at the moment about the future?
What excites me most is the technology that is now being made available and more affordable. You know, more and more we have those seeds that are resistant to floods and resistant to drought. One, it helps increase the yield and therefore the productivity. Secondly, it reduces the use of water, and the potential of increasing the income for the smallholders is quite high.
Water is a precious resource. Without it, there's no life. In farming and in agriculture, we have to change how we use it and how we manage it. It's going to be difficult and it's going to take time. But if we act now, we have the ability to protect this most valuable asset for future generations. Vital work is underway by scientists and engineers to drastically reduce the amount of water used in global agriculture and to ensure sustainable farming in the future. To learn more about disruptive changes taking place, go to bbc.com/followthefood.